Nvidia announcing it's going to invest $100 billion in OpenAI as part of a data center build-out. The plan will require 10 gigawatts of power. The largest plant in the U.S. currently runs 4.6 gigawatts. Here to break down what's going on so far, retired Southern Company CEO Tom Fanning, who has a long career in trying to figure out how to generate power for people, obviously at Southern Company, and you're also Atlanta Fed for a while, so you're like you wear a lot of different hats. It's been a while. It's good.
Swiss Army knife.
Is it like a Swiss Army knife? Like very utilitarian, right?
American Army knife. How about that? But yeah,
I'd pay more for that. I would pay more for that, Andrew. So this is no small feat, Tom, and you're actually involved in this now. That's what you are doing now, right? Trying to figure out ways to for public-private partnerships to generate power?
No, actually, what I'm doing right now is working on whether it's cyber or physical security for critical infrastructure.
For security, too, yeah. Okay. National security efforts between the private sector and the government. But you can... All right, then why are you on?
I think the exciting announcement yesterday with Nvidia really does raise the question: can we meet this moment as a nation? I really think we can, but boy, oh boy, it's going to be challenging. We need everybody in the boat to get it done. Let's think about it. The kind of assets that we're talking about here, these generative AI server farms, et cetera, are requiring something like 24/7 capacity and energy. So that really speaks to something like nuclear, like baseload natural gas, maybe some combination of a portfolio of renewables, solar, wind, storage. I think that's going to be kind of small. In the very near term, I think you may be able to free up some capacity by delaying the retirement of some assets that under the prior administration were scheduled to be closed by the end of the decade. So look,
you mean because of the type of energy they used, they were considered dirty?
Yeah, coal, and they were fully controlled and everything else. But still, I think the economics of where we were at the time just said that we were going to close a lot of coal assets by the end of this decade. I think we can still achieve long-term goals by just delaying the interim retirement of those assets into something that makes sense. Look, I think this administration's doing the right things. If you think about nuclear, I think we're trying to shorten the permitting requirements necessary to build new nuclear. Becky, you mentioned it earlier in the program. The objective, I think, may be to shrink that period down to about 18 months. That would really be helpful. I think the idea of natural gas, I get drill, baby, drill, but the other thing you got to do is get the gas to where it needs to be consumed. So we need to speed up in a very significant way the location and construction of natural gas pipelines. There's a whole host of supply chain issues that need to be addressed. All challenging, but all doable. Look, I think we need to locate much more resources for especially large forgings. When we did Vogtle, the first nuclear plant in a generation of Americans, we dealt with Mongiarati in Italy, IHI in Japan. When you think about major equipment, transformers, turbines, we were dealing with Doosan and Toshiba. We need to think about where those are going to come from. Don't underestimate the importance of skilled labor. Even when we were the only shop in town building Vogtle, we had challenges getting electricians, pipe fitters, welders to the site. Think about the magnitude. And Joe, your magnitudes are about right. We built somewhere over 2,200 megawatts, new generation. We're going to need to do that in a magnitude of 4 times. We need to get that labor. A key guy here, I think, in America could be Sean McGarvey, the head of the United States Building Trades. Permitting transmission, big deal. Listen, I think there's enough capital available to get this done. I think we need everybody in the boat. This is a moment for America where I think if we get our incentives put in the right place, we can get it done.
what is, you went right down the list, and it's fascinating, all the things that, first you said we need the natural gas, we got to do the more pipelines, build more nuclear, then you got the permitting you're worried about, then you got the labor. What is CWIP versus expensing units in the big, beautiful bill? So that some of the things in the big, beautiful bill will help with this?
Well, sure, but the big, beautiful bill deals with effectively depreciating 100% of an asset in a current tax year, and typically that's when it's in service. When you think about some of these assets that take years to build, so let's say natural gas combined cycle takes 4 to 5 years, a nuclear plant, even if you're successful with the advanced permitting ideas, could be 8 to 10 years. You're going to have cash flow out by the sponsor, the constructor, that is going to put a great deal of strain on cash flow. What you'd love to be able to do, this idea of CWIP, means for these kinds of projects, we need to expense for tax purposes as if we were depreciating them in the year in which the cash is expended before the in-service date.
Right.
That's kind of a big deal. We were able to do that in Georgia with the cooperation of the Public Utilities Commission there. Look,
Tom,
these things are solvable, but we've got to work together.
Tom, I got 2 questions for you. One relates to this question. A lot of skeptics of all of this have said, look, some of these states that have been desperate to try to get data centers built in them at some point are going to regret it, with the idea being that all of this energy that we're talking about building that's needed to power all of this is going to, if you look at these contracts, they guarantee typically, and the AI data centers require, something like very close to 100% uptime, which
That's
eventually
right.
means that you're going to ultimately prioritize energy going into those data centers, oftentimes not even connected to the grid in certain cases, so that, if there happens to be a storm or a hurricane or something terrible happens, when everybody in the town loses their electricity and they look at the data center all lit up, there is going to be potentially a political problem, if you will. How do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. Andrew, you actually raised a number of different questions, but let me hit a couple. When we build an energy portfolio for a region, it requires certain baseload. That is, it's going to run 24/7, a nuclear plant. It's going to require some intermediate capacity, say something that runs 20 to 70% of the time. Typically, that's natural gas combined cycles, and then peaking, things that will run days within a year. When I think about adding this type of load into a regional portfolio, I'm just going to build more baseload capacity. And so as I construct those portfolios, I'm not going to disadvantage anybody. But you're raising another really important issue, and that is one of affordability. Look, we've got to provide reliability. We've got to provide resilience. That is, reliability in those times where otherwise the grid is stressed, a hurricane, for example. But we've got to make sure that for all customers, that we put these assets in place in an affordable way. Finally, this idea of priorities is very interesting. And this is something I've been working on with my new gig. Whenever we have interruptions, every utility in a very tactical sense has a well-developed sense of priorities. We're going to turn on, for example, hospitals faster than we will 7-Eleven stores. We're going to turn on fuel resources faster than we will movie theaters. So, look, we understand the notion of priority. But what you're talking about here for the good of America is the idea of not systemically tactical priorities, but something very much more strategic in nature. And when we think about electricity being kind of the center of these critical infrastructures in America, what about finance? What about communications? What about health and human services and water and a variety of other things?